Good day and welcome to Code Escuela. In this session, we will talk about single-dimensional arrays. Single-dimensional arrays. A single-dimensional array or an array in general is a structure that allows you to store one or more values of a specific type in a single variable. One simple example is like when you want to store the different levels of your game having levels 1, 2, 3, or 4. Think of it like a line of boxes and each box has a label. Let's go through a code example. So now, this is how you would define or declare a variable. So the basic syntax of an array, uh, in this case specifically a single dimensional array, is you start with a data type and then these two brackets, open and close brackets, and then the name of your array, and then equals new, the new keyword, and then space, the data type. So you started with an int, you also have to use int here, and then you have open and close brackets, and then inside of that is you declare the size of your array. So what does that mean? So an array must have a size, okay? Size means uh, how many values you want to store in your array, okay? So now we have here our uh, array. So now with arrays, what you can do with arrays is that you can store values in it, or you can get values from it. So first off, if you want to store values on an array, you would access it, each of the, let's say, boxes in your array via an index. So in array, accessing array boxes is by array indexing. So in this case, in C sharp, it's based on a zero-based index, okay? So which means that for in this case, if we have declared an array of 5 integer values, then the start of the array would be 0, okay? So now we have here several assignment statements, okay? So first off, we've assigned at index 0 with the value of 1, and then at index 1 the value of 2, index 2 value of 3, index 3 value of 4, and index 4 value of 5, okay? So you have to remember that if you want to the length of the your array is, if you want to do indexing in it, or accessing the values, then you have to like sort of subtract 1 so that you don't get uh, uh, sort of like inaccessible indexes, okay? So now here in line 20, I have passed it onto a method that would accept our array, and then it would print the contents of it, okay? So if we would look at the method for that one, it is this one. I have created that here below. So you have your print array that would accept as a parameter an array of integers, and then we have here the body of the method, which is a for loop. So one way you can access a array is you can loop through each of the items in it, okay, or an elements of it. So this way we have our for loop. So we have declared a starting value, which would be our starting index, initialized to 0, since our array would start with 0. And then we have here our condition that if the index is less than the length of it, and then we execute this code, and then we loop, we increment so that we could move further within our array, okay? So if we run this, okay, all right, so now we have here, let's zoom in a bit, so you can see that in each of the elements that we stored in or assigned the values 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we have also been able to get the value out of it, okay? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5. So that's the output, okay? Because we have used array indexing, okay? So this is a way of getting the value of the elements within your array, and it's also one way of assigning or putting values within the in the elements of your array, okay? So that's one way. So next is, let us move to this example. Let's focus on this line 21, 22, and 23. Okay, let's uncomment this one, including this one. Okay, so now there are several ways that you can create an array or initialize an array. So we have here at line 21, we have this way. So we have a new and then int, and then we have here an empty uh, brackets, and then we followed it with this line. So we have within our curly braces, we can immediately define the values of our array. Okay, so that would mean that in index 0, its value is 1, index 1 is 2, and index 3 is, in index 2, its the value is 3. So the length or the size of this array would be 3. Okay, next in line 22, we have also did both. So like what we did on line 15, we have set the size, and then we have also placed the value in it, okay, inside it. So if we do run this one, we should be able to see the values for arrays to variable. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then let's try outputting the arrays 3 array. Okay, so we should be able to see that it has both outputs for arrays 2 and 3. So arrays 2 would be 1, 2, 3, and then we have 4, 5, 6 for arrays 3. Okay? Okay, next. Let us uncomment this. Let's comment this one. So let's move on to our next example. So here, we have also an array that is of an array of strings. Okay? So with array of strings, we have created a new array of string, this one, and then we have initialized it to these values. Okay, and then we can also loop through it. So we have here the uh, overloaded method for the print array that accepts a array of strings. Okay, and then of course with the same almost the same uh, code for the print array for the integer or array of integers. Okay, so simple. And then with this one, we can run this, and we can see that it has an output of all the contents of our array or string array. So we have favorite sports, we have football, cycling, mountain biking, swimming, and running, right? So you have iterated through each of the elements. Okay, so that is uh, an example of different data type. So basically, you can use any of the built-in data types. You can create arrays from it, including the floats, decimals, and even you can also even store it or create an array of objects if that is what you prefer. Okay, and finally, what would happen if you access an array element that is not within your array? Okay, so we have here we have tried to get the value of our favorite sports string array, and then we set the or set the element the index to 5, which in this case would uh, result in an exception or an error. Why? Because if you can remember, in C sharp, arrays always start with 0. Okay, so now if this we have set this, or we have trying to access this index 5, what would happen is that we have 0, 1, 2, this mountain biking, this would be index 2, index 3, and index 4, and then index 5 doesn't exist. Okay, so what would happen if we try to access an element that does not exist. Okay, let's run through this, and we can see that we have an exception. So it would say system that index out of range exception. Okay, index was outside the bounds of the array, which means that you're trying to access an element that does not exist. Okay, so that's what you get with uh, trying to access an array element that is uh, greater than its actual size. Okay, also same thing with if you're trying to access an index that is below 0, or like this one. In this case, we have set it as -1, and if we try to run this one, yeah, so we also get the same exception or error, index out of range exception. All right, so you have to remember that when trying to access an index, what you get is, I mean, you should the minimum should be always 0, and then you move positive numbers up. Okay, and it should also be whole numbers. There is no fractional index. Okay, you can put here 1.5. It does not exist within arrays. Okay, so that is how you access arrays. So for us to visualize this before we end this session, let us look at how arrays would be represented like, or visually. So if we open, let's say Excel, let's open a blank work. Okay, so now if you are going to try to visualize an array, think of an array as like a series of boxes. Okay, so if you declared a single dimensional array, in our case, like for example, we have here favorite sports, then we have 5 values, and then each value is uh, placed in a specific index or in its own box. So you have indexing of 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So now, uh, oops. So now, internally, it would be like this, represented like in uh, in address 0 or box 0. You would have that value. Okay, let's say football. Okay, that would be its value at that box. Okay, or index. Now, index 1, you have cycling. That would be its value at index 1 or box number 1. Okay, and then so on and so forth. So if we complete this one, we have here, sorry, we have at index 2, mountain biking, and then we have at index 3, swimming, and then at index 4, finally we have running. Okay, so that would be its representation of what an actual what an array would be like. Okay, so forget about the ABCD, the top columns and the left rows here, the numbers here. Okay, just focus on this one. So if we let's add a how do you put boxes on? Okay, so to make it much clearer, right? So now you have your boxes. So this would be what your array would look like if it's an array of strings. Same thing with an array of integers. So you have at index 0, then index 1, and then the way you access it is you indicate the index. So that is a representation of a single dimensional array. Okay, this session has been all about arrays. Thank you for joining us in this learning, and see you in our next session.